You didn't choose the wound. You didn't choose the moment that broke you, the silence that followed, or the questions that still echo in the back of your mind. But you are here now, standing in the aftershock, trying to make sense of a story that never gave you an ending. And this is where your healing begins, not with answers, but with awareness. Because the wound was never your fault, but the responsibility to rise has always been yours. You waited for clarity that never came. You hoped for explanations that were never spoken. You tried to make peace with shadows, with memories that play on repeat, with words you never got to say. That is the quiet kind of pain, the kind that doesn't scream, but slowly drains you from the inside. Yet even in that silence, something in you refused to die. Something in you kept searching for light. Loss introduces you to yourself. Confusion forces you to see what certainty once hid. When everything familiar collapses, you meet the parts of you that only rise in darkness. Your awakening begins in the very place you were abandoned. This is the truth you must hold. Closure is not a doorway someone opens for you. Closure is the room you build with your own hands. It is choosing to stop bleeding from a wound someone else left. It is choosing to end a chapter without waiting for approval. It is choosing yourself when someone else did not. And this journey you are about to take is not gentle. It is not passive. It is not soft. It is the rebuilding of a self that was interrupted. It is the reclaiming of a life that was paused. It is the moment you stop chasing the past and start creating your future. You are not here to wait anymore. You are here to rise. You are here to understand that the story may remain unfinished, but you do not have to. Your healing begins when you decide it does. And now, as you step into the next chapter, you will confront the truth that has waited for you all along. Closure is not something given. It is something created. In the space between what hurt you and what will heal you, you will learn to build peace with your own strength, not their apology. This is where your new power begins now. Chapter 1. When answers never come. Sometimes the hardest part of a story isn't the ending. It's the silence that follows. Because when a chapter closes with clarity, your heart can at least turn the page. But when someone walks away without explanation, when a relationship dissolves without warning, when a promise evaporates without reason, you're left in a kind of emotional limbo. A space where everything feels half open, half wounded, half healed. And that halfness hurts more than the loss itself. There are moments in life when you don't just lose a person. You lose answers. You lose understanding. You lose the version of reality you thought you were living. You replay conversations, searching for hints you missed. You lie awake, wondering where it went wrong. You trace timelines in your mind, stitching together moments like broken glass, hoping that if you piece them together long enough, maybe the truth will reveal itself. But it doesn't. Because the truth isn't missing. It was never given. And so, you sit with pain that has no explanation, memories that have no closure, and questions that have no voice to answer them. This is the torture of unresolved endings. Not the what happened, but the why didn't I deserve to know. You feel abandoned by clarity, rejected not just by a person, but by understanding itself. One moment you're whole, and the next, you're carrying the weight of unfinished sentences and irreversible distance. And what makes it worse? Silence has a way of making you question your worth. In that quiet, You begin inventing reasons, all of them unkind to yourself. You convince yourself you weren't enough, or you were too much, or you did something unforgivable that you somehow can't remember. You blame your heart for trusting. You blame your kindness for giving. You blame your hope for believing. But the truth is simpler. People leave for reasons that often have nothing to do with you. Their silence does not define your worth. Their inability to communicate does not reflect your value. Their choice to disappear says more about their wounds than your failures. Still, knowing that doesn't make the ache disappear, because unresolved endings don't just break your heart, they freeze it. You feel stuck in a moment that refuses to move forward, stuck in questions that refuse to settle, stuck in stories that refuse to finish themselves. You wait for closure like waiting for rain in a drought. You hope it will arrive, and it never does. And yet, here's the truth that slowly begins to rise inside you, even through the pain. Not all answers would have healed you. Not all explanations lead to peace. Not all closure comes from someone else. Sometimes, the absence of a reason is the reason. Sometimes the unanswered ending is the answer. Because if the truth would have brought you peace, it would have arrived. If an explanation would have softened the wound, it would have been offered. If clarity was part of your healing, it wouldn't have been withheld. Their silence is not a failure of communication. It is a confession of their capacity. And slowly, you learn that the lack of closure does not mean the lack of a future. You realize that even without understanding the ending, you can still grow beyond it. You can still rise, even if you never know why you had to fall. You can still rebuild a heart that was broken without warning. One day, the pain becomes less of a sharp ache and more of a quiet teacher. A reminder of your ability to survive what you did not expect. A symbol of your strength to carry on without the answers you wanted. You learn to stop negotiating with a past that refuses to speak. You learn to stop begging for clarity from people who chose silence. You learn that your healing cannot be dependent on another person's explanation. Because closure is not something given. Closure is something created. And it begins the moment you stop looking backward for a reason and start looking inward for a path. The moment you stop asking, "Why did this happen to me?" and start asking, "What is this trying to awaken in me?" Yes, the ending was painful. Yes, the silence was cruel. Yes, the unanswered questions left scars. But beneath all of that, something else was forming. Quietly, slowly, powerfully. A turning point, a shift, a doorway to a version of you who doesn't need someone else's truth to find your own. Because the absence of answers forces you somewhere unexpected, into yourself. It pushes you to examine your strength, your patterns, your hopes, your fears. It turns the spotlight inward, not as blame, but as discovery. It makes you realize that your life cannot stay paused, waiting for someone who chose not to speak. Your healing begins the moment you choose movement over mourning. The moment you decide that the silence will no longer hold your life hostage. And that choice, that quiet decision inside your chest, becomes the first step toward freedom. You may never know why they left. You may never understand why the ending unfolded the way it did. You may never receive the words you deserved. But here is what you do know. You are still here. You are still breathing. You are still capable of rebuilding a life that makes sense, even when the past does not. And as you take that truth into your hands, like the first warm light after a long night, you begin to feel something shift. You realize that the story isn't over. It's simply moving in a new direction, one written by you. And with that realization, a new chapter begins. A chapter not about waiting, but about awakening. Not about what was taken, but about what can be created. Not about seeking answers, but about seeking yourself. This is where your healing truly starts. This is where your power returns. And this is where chapter 2 begins. The moment you understand that closure is something you build from the inside out. Chapter 2. The illusion of closure. For most of your life, you were taught a quiet lie. A lie wrapped in movies, stories, breakup scenes, heartfelt reunions, and dramatic final conversations. The lie goes like this: if I could just hear the truth, I could finally move on. We grow up believing closure is something another person hands us, like a key to unlock the door of our healing. We tell ourselves the pain would fade if only they apologized, if only they explained, if only they told us what went wrong, or why they changed, or why they disappeared. We imagine closure as a moment, a conversation, a confession, an ending wrapped neatly with emotional clarity. But closure, as most people imagine it, is an illusion. Because here's the truth: most of us learn only after being broken. The person who hurt you is rarely the person who can heal you. The belief that closure comes from them, from their words, their explanations, their perspective, keeps you trapped. It ties your healing to someone who has already shown you they cannot carry your emotions with care. And when you tie your healing to another person's honesty, apology, or maturity, you give them something far greater than the power to hurt you. You give them the power to determine when your life moves forward. Most people aren't cruel. They're simply incapable of offering the closure you're asking for. They don't have answers for you because half the time they don't even have answers for themselves. Their silence isn't always intentional. Often it's avoidance, confusion, guilt, or the inability to face their own reflection. And even if they did give you the explanation you crave, it would likely fall short of the healing you imagine, because the truth we seek from others is never as satisfying as the truth we create within ourselves. Closure is not a moment. It's not a message. It's not hearing the words, "I'm sorry." Closure is a shift in understanding, a private, internal decision to stop waiting. Think of how many times you've replayed old conversations in your mind, how many times you built imaginary explanations, imaginary apologies, imaginary accountability. Your mind tries to finish a story that someone else left unfinished. But the danger of waiting is this: the longer you wait for someone else to bring you peace, the longer you postpone your own life. Waiting creates emotional paralysis. Waiting freezes your growth. Waiting convinces you that you cannot move on without permission. This is the illusion of closure, the belief that healing comes from outside instead of inside. You can spend months or even years hoping for that final conversation. But when it finally comes, if it comes at all, it rarely carries the weight you expect. Sometimes the apology feels too late. Sometimes the explanation doesn't match the pain. Sometimes the truth lands flat because you've already learned more from the silence than you ever could from their words. And sometimes the closure never comes. But what if that's not a tragedy? What if that's the lesson? Because here's what pain teaches you when you start looking inward. Closure is not granted by someone else's presence. It is born from your own acceptance. And acceptance isn't approval. It isn't saying the pain didn't matter. It isn't pretending the betrayal didn't cut deep. Acceptance simply means you refuse to let the past hold your future hostage. It means you acknowledge what happened, or what didn't happen. And you choose to free yourself from the need for answers that may never exist. Look at your life for a moment. Look at the relationships, opportunities, memories, and moments you've outgrown. So much of your evolution didn't come from a perfect ending. It came from an imperfect one. Growth often arrives as a rupture, not a resolution. Think about it. You didn't learn strength from the people who stayed. You learned it from the ones who left. You didn't learn boundaries from those who respected them. You learned them from the ones who crossed them. You didn't learn clarity from comfortable moments. You learned it from chaos. Life rarely gives you closure in a clean, beautiful package. It gives you closure through experience, through survival, through the wisdom that forms when you realize you lived through what you thought would break you. The illusion of closure dissolves the moment you understand this. You don't need a final chapter to begin a new story. You only need the courage to stop rereading the old one. This realization doesn't happen overnight. Healing is not a snap of the fingers. It's a gradual unlearning. It's waking up one day and realizing you no longer crave answers with the same intensity. It's slowly releasing the hope that the past will ever look different. It's forgiving yourself for the ways you waited, not because you were weak, but because you were human. And then, something shifts, something quiet but powerful. You no longer chase closure. You begin creating it, not through conversations, but through choices, not through explanations, but through understanding, not through resolution, but through reclaiming your power. Because once you realize closure was never theirs to give, you start taking back everything you once handed away. Your worth, your identity, your peace. You begin asking new questions. Not why did they leave, but why did I stay so long in the waiting? Not what did I do wrong, but what do I deserve moving forward? Not when will they explain themselves, but how can I set myself free today? This shift, this moment of taking your healing into your own hands, becomes the bridge to the next chapter of your life. Because the next step isn't about understanding them. It's about understanding you. It's about reclaiming the power you gave away in the waiting. It's about rebuilding the parts of you that were shaped around someone else's silence. It's about rising from unanswered endings with a stronger, clearer sense of who you are. And that becomes the heart of the next chapter. If closure is an illusion, then power is reality. And now, it's time to reclaim yours. Chapter 3. Reclaiming your power from the past. There comes a moment in every healing journey when you finally get tired of feeling powerless. Tired of replaying the same memories. Tired of carrying the weight of people who walked away, acted carelessly, or left their chaos in your hands. And in that moment, that quiet, frustrated, exhausted moment, something within you begins to shift. It doesn't start with confidence. It doesn't start with clarity. It starts with a simple, painful truth. You cannot change what happened, but you can change what you do with it. This realization is the birthplace of power. Because for so long, you didn't just lose someone. You lost parts of yourself. You gave away your peace to memories that no longer deserved your presence. You handed your identity to people who didn't know how to hold it. Your past became a prison, not because of what happened, but because you kept revisiting the cell. And now, it's time to walk out. Reclaiming your power doesn't mean pretending you weren't hurt. It doesn't mean minimizing your pain or acting like you're suddenly invincible. It means you stop letting what broke you dictate what becomes of you. Pain sharpens you, but it's not meant to own you. For too long, the past has acted like a shadow, following you, shaping you, convincing you that what happened to you defines what can happen for you. But when you decide to reclaim your power, you flip that narrative. You stop being the victim of old stories, and you start becoming the author of new ones. This is the shift, from suffering into strength, from paralysis into progress. Think of the past as a storm you survived. You didn't walk through it gracefully. You didn't come out without scars. But you're here. You're breathing. You're learning. And the fact that you are still standing means the storm failed. Now the question becomes, do you want to keep living like the storm is still happening? Because so many people do. They survive the worst days of their life, but then they keep carrying those days like anchors. They walk through their present weighed down by the emotions of yesterday. This is where reclaiming your power begins. In realizing that your pain is real, but so is your ability to rise. And rising is a choice you make long before you feel ready. The truth is this: no one is coming to hand you strength. No one is coming to rewrite your past. No one is coming to apologize in a way that magically erases the memories you've tried to outrun. But you don't need them to. You can choose today to stop letting their actions define your worth. You can choose to stop letting old wounds shape your identity. You can choose to stop reliving the pain and start rebuilding the future. It starts with boundaries. Not boundaries for others. Boundaries for your own mind. Because the mind is where old stories thrive. It's where guilt loops, where shame echoes, where memories replay like a broken film you wish you could edit. But here's the truth. You can. You can interrupt the cycle. You can stop the replay. You can tell your mind, we are not going back there again. Reclaiming your power is not about erasing the past. It's about removing its control. Every time you resist the urge to revisit old pain, you reclaim power. Every time you choose the present moment over a past memory, you reclaim power. Every time you affirm who you are becoming instead of clinging to who hurt you, you reclaim power. This is how strength grows, one decision at a time. But let's be honest, reclaiming your power is uncomfortable. It forces you to confront truths you avoided. It asks you to take responsibility for your healing, even when the hurt wasn't your fault. It pushes you to stop blaming the past for a future you haven't started building. Victimhood is seductive because it removes responsibility. It tells you, there's nothing you can do. It's not your fault. Just wait. But waiting is just another form of surrender. When you reclaim your power, you rewrite that message. You tell yourself, I didn't choose the wound, but I choose what happens next. That is strength. Not loud, not glamorous, not dramatic, just steady, grounded, quietly unstoppable. Reclaiming your power also means seeing the past clearly. Not romantically, not dramatically, not as a story that comforts you in its familiarity. Clarity hurts, but it heals. When you stop idealizing the people who hurt you, you reclaim power. When you stop blaming yourself for their choices, you reclaim power. When you stop expecting your history to give you peace, you reclaim power. The moment you say, "I am done giving my energy to what is already over," you break chains you didn't even realize you were dragging. And then something unexpected happens. You begin to feel your strength returning. Your mind gets quieter. Your decisions become cleaner. Your identity grows more defined. You begin to trust yourself again. Or maybe for the first time. Because healing isn't just about letting go of others. It's about finally holding on to yourself. Every moment of pain taught you something. Every disappointment sharpened your intuition. Every ending made you wiser. Every silence showed you your own voice. You are not who you were when the past hurt you. You are stronger, sharper, and far more capable than you give yourself credit for. And now, you're beginning to step into who you were meant to be. Someone who does not break at the same places anymore. Someone who does not look backward for answers. Someone who does not wait for healing to arrive from outside. You are becoming someone who creates their own peace. This chapter, Reclaiming Your Power, is not the end of your transformation. It's the beginning of a deeper battle, a deeper rebuilding. Because once you reclaim your power from the past, the next battle begins within. The mind, your thoughts, the inner world that still carries echoes of old pain and old fear. And that is where we go next, to the battlefield inside you, where real healing begins. Chapter 4. Your mind, the battlefield of recovery. Your mind can be your greatest ally, or it can be your cruelest enemy. Right now, it probably feels like both. One moment, you're trying to focus, to breathe, to move forward. The next, a memory hits like a freight train. A phrase from the past repeats endlessly. A conversation you didn't finish replays in slow motion. The mind is relentless in its pursuit of unresolved emotion. And if you let it, it will keep you trapped in yesterday while your future waits silently outside the door. Healing begins here, in the battlefield of your own thoughts, because recovery is not just emotional. It is mental. Your brain will attempt to trick you into believing that the past defines you. It will try to convince you that the pain you carry is permanent. It will replay the injustices, betrayals, losses, and regrets like a broken record. And for a moment, it feels impossible to stop. Your mind spins in spirals of what if and if only. It whispers accusations and questions that have no answers. It reminds you of every misstep, every failure, every moment when someone left without explanation. And in those moments, you feel powerless. Like the mind is a cage built from memories and fear. But here's the truth. Your mind is not your enemy. It is a tool. It is a weapon. It is a canvas. And like any tool, its effectiveness depends on how you wield it. Yes, your thoughts can destroy you. Yes, your memories can paralyze you. Yes, your internal monologue can become a prison. But that same mind can also become the instrument of your liberation. It can teach you discipline, patience, and resilience. It can allow you to choose the narrative instead of being trapped by it. The first step in reclaiming your mind is recognition. Notice the thoughts as they arise. Observe the patterns of rumination and replay. See the mental loops for what they are. Old circuits running the same program because they haven't been rewritten yet. You are not failing because these thoughts exist. You are human because they do. Contrast is the key. Where the mind creates spirals of chaos, you can introduce steady steps of control. Where confusion tempts you to replay the past, you can practice conscious awareness. Where overthinking tries to suffocate your clarity, you can train focus and intentionality. This is the battlefield, a place of constant tension between reaction and choice, between surrender and command. And it is here, in these small battles, that real healing occurs. Every time you resist the pull of intrusive thoughts, you reclaim a fraction of your freedom. Every time you redirect your mental energy toward what serves your growth, you strengthen your emotional armor. Every time you pause before reacting to old triggers, you regain control over your story. The mind often fights back fiercely. It will attempt to convince you that controlling it is futile. It will remind you of every failure, every heartbreak, every unanswered question. It will whisper, "You are weak. You are stuck. You will never move on." And here, your choice matters more than ever. You can let the mind dictate your reality, or you can dictate the mind's reality. This requires discipline, the kind that feels uncomfortable at first, because your mind is used to running on autopilot. It thrives on habit, repetition, and old emotional scripts. To interrupt that, you must intervene consciously and consistently. You must train your thoughts with the same dedication you would train your body for strength or endurance. One effective approach is awareness. When a memory surfaces, do not fight it. Recognize it. Label it. This is a memory, not a command. When intrusive thoughts arise, do not judge yourself for them. Acknowledge them and gently redirect your focus to what is present. This simple act of recognition breaks the unconscious power these thoughts hold over you. Next comes redirection. Instead of spiraling, choose intentional mental steps. Practice visualization of your strength. Recite mantras that reinforce your autonomy. Engage with thoughts that expand your resilience instead of constricting your heart. The more you redirect, the more your mind learns that control is possible. The mind's battlefield is also about emotional flashbacks, sudden waves of pain that seem to arrive without warning. You may feel anger, grief, or shame as if it were happening in the moment again. Do not resist. Observe. Breathe. Anchor yourself in the present. Remind yourself, this is memory, not reality. This is the past revisiting, not the present destroying. The repetition of this practice strengthens your ability to remain grounded, even in the storm. And here is the final truth. Your mind, once disciplined, becomes your ally in ways you never imagined. It can remind you of your worth when self-doubt strikes. It can illuminate your path when confusion clouds your judgment. It can guide your decisions when emotional impulse tempts you toward self-sabotage. The same tool that tormented you can also empower you, but only if you claim the role of commander. This is the transition point, from chaos to control, from spiral to steady steps, from reaction to conscious choice. It is here, on this mental battlefield, that the next layer of healing begins. Because once you recognize that your thoughts are not enemies but instruments, you can begin to forge emotional discipline. You can train yourself to feel without being ruled by feeling. You can experience pain without surrendering to it. You can navigate memory without being trapped in it. And that is where we go next. To the discipline that shapes the heart, to the mastery that aligns mind, emotion, and action, to the practices that transform struggle into power. Your battlefield is ready. Your mind is waiting. And the next step is learning how to command both with purpose. Chapter 5. Emotional discipline, standing firm in the storm. Life will test you, not gently, not politely, not in ways that feel fair. It will hit like a storm, leaving you shaken, rattled, and raw. Moments will come when anger surges, when grief threatens to drown you, when fear whispers that you're not enough. The question is not whether these storms arrive. The question is how you stand in them. This is the essence of emotional discipline, the ability to remain unbroken, composed, and purposeful, even when chaos rages around you. Most people react. They allow emotions to dictate action. They lash out, withdraw, self-sabotage, or collapse. And in doing so, they give the storm more power than it deserves. They let temporary waves of feeling carve permanent valleys of regret. They live as though emotion is command, not messenger. But discipline is the counterforce. Discipline is seeing the storm clearly, feeling it fully, and choosing your response instead of surrendering. It is the quiet mastery that separates reaction from response, weakness from strength, chaos from control. The first step is awareness. Emotional discipline begins the moment you recognize the rise of a feeling: anger, sadness, frustration, fear, before it becomes action. This is not denial. It is acknowledgement with intent. You observe the surge without immediately yielding to it. You feel the heat without letting it consume you. You identify the impulse without letting it define you. Contrast is crucial here. Reacting feels explosive, uncontrollable, temporary. Responding feels grounded, deliberate, and lasting. Collapse feels like surrender. Composure feels like power. And the difference between these paths is not luck. It is training. Training your emotional muscle requires practice in small moments, daily interactions, and subtle triggers. It is in traffic, in disagreements, in missed expectations, in criticism, in the loneliness of waiting. Each encounter is a microcosm of storm and response. Each test builds or erodes your mastery. You learn that standing firm is not about suppressing emotion. It is about directing it toward purpose, not chaos. Let's be honest. The temptation to react is seductive. It offers a false relief, a temporary sense of control, a flash of release. But that release is fleeting. It leaves aftermath, regret, guilt, damaged relationships, fractured self-respect. Responding, by contrast, creates durable strength. It preserves integrity. It reinforces boundaries. It fortifies the mind and heart for storms yet to come. The next layer of discipline is self-regulation. You cannot command what you do not understand. So you begin observing your triggers. You catalog your emotional patterns. You notice which words, actions, or memories ignite the storm within. And then, slowly, deliberately, you practice interrupting those patterns. A deep breath, a pause, a counted moment, a mantra. I will not be moved by what is outside me. These small acts compound. They train the nervous system to respond with steadiness rather than reactivity. Composure is not passive. It is intentional power. It is saying to the storm, I see you. I feel you. I choose how to act. You are not emotionless. You are in command. You are not numb. You are awake. You are not hiding from pain. You are navigating it with precision. Emotional discipline is also about understanding the impermanence of every feeling. Anger, fear, grief, none lasts forever. By observing their natural rise and fall, you prevent them from controlling your life. You learn that storms are temporary, but mastery is lasting. You learn to ride the waves instead of drowning in them. One of the most powerful aspects of emotional control is timing. Every thought, word, and action has an ideal moment. React too quickly, and you lose clarity. Pause, breathe, and respond with intention, and you gain influence. The storm may rage outside, but your inner steadiness becomes a shield, a platform, a vantage point. From here, you act with wisdom instead of impulse. The beauty of emotional discipline is that it extends beyond crises. It strengthens relationships, career decisions, and personal goals. It gives you the space to hear truth, set boundaries, and protect your energy. It enables you to live in alignment with your highest self, even when the world seeks to pull you off course. Yet discipline is not perfection. You will falter. You will slip into reaction. You will feel the temptation to collapse. And that is human. The difference lies in returning, repeatedly, consistently, to the practice of composure. The discipline is not about being flawless. It is about being resilient. By mastering your emotional responses, you reclaim your power from circumstance. You learn that your peace is not dependent on the actions or words of others. You learn that storms, no matter how violent, do not have to leave destruction in your life. You learn that your internal world can remain anchored even as external chaos swirls. And this is where emotional discipline prepares you for the deeper challenge: letting go. Because the next stage of healing demands release. Release of resentment, release of expectation, release of control that no longer serves you. Discipline makes that possible. It gives you the steadiness to confront the difficult truths within yourself and the courage to surrender what you cannot change. Without this foundation, letting go becomes impossible. The heart will resist. The mind will argue. Old habits will whisper that holding on is necessary. But with emotional discipline, you can stand firm in the storm while gently opening your hand. You are learning a truth few master. Control your response, and you control the shape of your life. Control your mind, and you control the influence of the past. Control your emotions, and you become unstoppable, even in the chaos of a world that refuses to pause for your healing. This is the power of standing firm. This is the mastery of composure. This is the preparation for true liberation. And now, with the storm observed, understood, and met with deliberate calm, the next challenge emerges: letting go. Not through force, not through forgetting, but through conscious, disciplined release. The path forward requires surrender, but not weakness. Surrender grounded in strength, clarity, and unwavering self-command. You have learned to withstand the storm. Next, you will learn to release it. Chapter 6. Letting go without forgetting. Letting go does not mean forgetting. It does not mean erasing the memory, pretending it never happened, or forgiving without feeling. Letting go means taking the power out of the past. It means refusing to let what once hurt you dictate what now defines you. It is not a surrender to weakness. It is a declaration of strength. For too long, your mind has clung to words unspoken, clung to silences that screamed, clung to betrayals, regrets, and unfinished stories as if holding them tight could somehow restore what was lost. Clinging feels safe at first. It is familiar. It is the comfort of rage, grief, or sadness that knows its rhythm. But clinging is also a chain. Every memory you hold with need, every thought you replay with obsession, keeps you tethered to a life you are meant to outgrow. Contrast reveals the truth. Clinging keeps you small. Releasing makes you whole. The past can shadow you, or you can step into the light it never provided. The difference is your choice, and choice is your weapon. Detachment is not indifference. It is not turning cold toward yourself or others. It is conscious separation, understanding that the events of yesterday exist in the past, while the life you build exists in the present. Detachment allows you to experience emotions without letting them govern your actions. It allows you to remember without being consumed. It allows you to honor the story without being trapped in it. Acceptance is the next step. You cannot rewrite the past. You cannot demand explanations that never come. You cannot control the actions of others, nor the timing of life's wounds. Acceptance is a radical act of sovereignty. It is saying, I acknowledge what happened, I feel it, and I will not let it rule me. It does not erase pain, but it removes the chains that pain tried to forge. Emotional neutrality is where true liberation begins. It is not about numbness. It is not about pretending. It is about meeting memories with calm awareness rather than reactive fear, anger, or longing. You remember and you feel, but you no longer tremble in the presence of the past. You hold the memory lightly, like a book you have read and closed, ready to carry its lessons without carrying its weight. Releasing without forgetting transforms the way you see yourself. You realize that your identity does not belong to anyone who left, betrayed, or failed you. Your self-worth is not anchored in approval, understanding, or closure from another. Your value is inherent. Your presence is not conditional on past narratives. You begin to disentangle who you are from what happened, and in doing so, you reclaim the space within you that grief and resentment once occupied. There will be moments of resistance. Your mind will whisper, you must hold on. You cannot release. You will forget yourself if you do. These are the remnants of old attachment, the echoes of familiar suffering. And each time you resist them, you strengthen the muscle of freedom. Each time you remember with neutrality rather than obsession, you assert control. Each time you allow the past to exist without letting it govern the present, you step into mastery. The process is not linear. Some days the past will surge with the force of a tidal wave. You may stumble, feel pain, even cry. That is human. That is natural. The difference is now you have the tools to meet the wave without being swept away. You have learned to observe, accept, and release. And in this practice, freedom grows. Contrast remains your guide. Clinging ties you to old wounds. Releasing anchors you in new life. The past is memory, not command. The present is choice, not reaction. This is the pivot, the shift from captivity to sovereignty, from dependency to self-rule. And here's the quiet power in letting go without forgetting. You carry the lessons, the wisdom, and even the scars, but you refuse to carry the suffering. You honor the impact without surrendering your autonomy. You acknowledge the story without rewriting your future around it. You hold the memory, not the control. This is preparation. Because once you release the grip of the past, the next step emerges naturally. Rebuilding your identity. You are no longer defined by loss. You are no longer shaped by absence. You are free to create yourself deliberately, consciously, without the weight of unfinished chapters dragging you backward. Your future self waits, stronger, wiser, and unburdened. Every act of emotional discipline, every practice of detachment, every moment of conscious acceptance brings you closer to that self. You begin to see that who you were yesterday does not determine who you are today. The past informs you, but it no longer confines you. And in this space, the foundation of your new identity begins to emerge. Stable, resilient, intentional, unshakable. A self built not on absence, not on explanation, not on another's actions, but on your own reclaimed power and deliberate choice. The path from holding on to letting go is not simple, but it is transformative. The storm of the past loses its voice. The chains of memory loosen. And what remains is clarity, strength, and the capacity to rebuild. Not around the old story, but around the self you are choosing to become. Letting go without forgetting is not a destination. It is the bridge. And the next step is reconstruction. The deliberate, conscious, unstoppable rebuilding of your identity after loss. Chapter 7. Rebuilding the self after the break. When everything you knew has shattered, the world can feel empty. The person you trusted, the life you imagined, the future you planned, gone, fractured, or altered beyond recognition. And in the silence that follows, you confront a question that terrifies and frees in equal measure. Who are you without it all? This is the moment of rebirth. The debris of broken trust, unfulfilled expectations, and past pain lies around you. But within the rubble, seeds of possibility wait quietly. This is the space where you are forced to create yourself from scratch, not from what others built for you, not from the roles assigned to you, not from the pain that defined you, but from the raw material of your own essence. Rebuilding the self begins with clarity. You strip away labels, excuses, and identities borrowed from others. You stop defining yourself by what you've lost and start asking, who am I without the weight of betrayal? Who am I without the shadow of regret? Who am I when I no longer seek approval from what hurt me? These are not easy questions. They demand honesty, courage, and a willingness to sit with the unknown. And yet, within that discomfort lies liberation. Contrast guides this process. Before, you were reactive, shaped by absence, pain, and chaos. Now, you step into proactive creation. Before, your identity was borrowed, fragmented, and reactive. Now it is deliberate, whole, and self-possessed. The broken self does not disappear overnight, but each conscious choice, each act of integrity, strengthens the foundation of who you are becoming. Begin with small declarations of autonomy. Decide what you will no longer tolerate. Decide what values you will carry forward. Decide which parts of your energy deserve investment and which do not. These choices are the bricks of reconstruction, and though they seem simple, they form the architecture of a resilient self. Next comes the practice of alignment. Your thoughts, words, and actions must converge. Every decision should reflect the principles of the person you intend to become. If you want strength, act with discipline. If you want peace, honor your boundaries. If you want joy, cultivate gratitude even in small, overlooked moments. The reconstructed self is not an idea. It is an experience, repeated, intentional, embodied. Contrast remains your ally. Where brokenness once dictated responses, self-direction now guides you. Where grief and anger controlled your behavior, intention now prevails. Where fear kept you paralyzed, courage propels you forward. Rebuilding is a daily practice of choosing the future over the past, creation over reaction, mastery over surrender. Visualize the new self as a sculpture emerging from stone. Every habit, every reflection, every choice chips away the old, reveals structure, and defines form. You cannot force perfection, but you can demand progress. You cannot erase scars, but you can honor them as part of the story that informs strength. Every moment spent acting with awareness is a stroke of the chisel, carving a self that no one else can break again. This process is also about reclaiming your narrative. The past will always exist. Memories of loss, betrayal, and unanswered questions will linger. But the story you tell yourself about your worth, your potential, your capability can change. And as you speak a new narrative, your actions reinforce it. Words and deeds aligned, intention and identity converged. You move from reaction to creation, from survivor to architect of your life. Reconstruction is not linear. There will be setbacks, moments of doubt, and echoes of old pain. There will be days when the absence of the old life feels like emptiness, and fear tempts you to return to familiar suffering. This is natural. Even in reconstruction, the old structures have left traces. The key is persistence. The decision to continue building, chisel in hand, even when progress feels invisible. An essential element of rebuilding is reclaiming self-trust. You must learn to listen to yourself again, honor your own instincts, and act without waiting for validation from what or who abandoned you. The reconstructed self trusts first and foremost itself. It measures worth internally, not externally. It decides, chooses, and moves with conviction, even when the world remains unpredictable. Contrast again illuminates the power of this transformation. Before, uncertainty and loss created fear. Now, uncertainty becomes a canvas. Before, dependence on others left you vulnerable. Now, reliance on self builds unshakable resilience. Before, identity was borrowed and fragmented. Now, it is deliberate, integrated, and whole. As you rebuild, you begin to notice subtle shifts. The heaviness that once weighed on your chest eases. The questions that once consumed your mind lose their urgency. You move through days with steadier steps, calmer breath, and clearer purpose. You begin to recognize that the self is not found in absence or loss, but in the conscious, courageous act of creating who you are meant to be. Rebuilding after the break also opens space for self-love. Once the foundation of the self is solid, you can nurture it, honor it, and protect it. You begin to see that love for yourself is not indulgence. It is essential. It is the soil in which strength, joy, and resilience grow. Without self-love, reconstruction is incomplete. With it, the new self flourishes. Your identity after loss is no longer defined by anyone else. It is authored by you. It is strengthened by every act of discipline, clarity, and intentionality. It is resilient because it has been tempered by adversity, not sheltered from it. It is luminous because it is rooted in truth. The truth that you survived, that you chose yourself, and that you are capable of becoming more than you ever imagined. The broken self was the past. The reconstructed self is your present and your future. And from this foundation emerges the next chapter of transformation: self-love. Not abstract or dependent on others, but grounded, practical, and fierce. Self-love is the next layer, the fuel that sustains growth, the shield that guards against the storms yet to come. You have reclaimed your power. You have let go without losing memory. And now, you stand ready to nurture yourself, to honor yourself, and to become the kind of person who no one can break again. The next step is learning to love yourself fully, the way you were always meant to be loved. Chapter 8. Learning to love yourself again. You have been through storms, loss, and silence. You have faced betrayals, absences, and unanswered questions. And now, after rebuilding the self from the ruins of pain, there is a new, quieter challenge: learning to love yourself again. This is not the easy, surface-level kind of love. It is not indulgence, vanity, or self-praise. It is a deep, radical devotion to the person who has endured, who is rebuilt, and who will continue to grow. It is seeing yourself clearly, flaws and all, and choosing care over criticism, nurturing over neglect. Contrast clarifies the journey. Self-neglect has been your shadow companion for too long. It whispered that your needs were secondary, that your worth was conditional, that your heart's voice could be ignored. Emptiness thrived in this neglect. But self-devotion changes the equation entirely. It fills, it restores, it honors, and it protects. It reminds you that you are not merely surviving, you are deserving, capable, and whole. Self-compassion is the foundation. You begin by speaking kindly to yourself in the moments you once condemned. When you falter, you forgive. When you stumble, you support. When your mind whispers unworthy thoughts, you challenge them with truth. I am enough. I am deserving. I am learning, growing, and healing. Compassion is the gentle hand guiding the self, steadying it without judgment. Next comes forgiveness, not for others, but for yourself. You forgive the choices you made while hurting. You forgive the moments you stayed silent or gave power away. You forgive the times you tolerated pain or held on to what no longer served you. Forgiveness is not erasing history. It is releasing your heart from unnecessary chains. It is acknowledging that you acted with the knowledge and strength you had at the time, and that you are no longer that version of yourself. Self-respect grows alongside compassion and forgiveness. You begin to define boundaries with clarity. You stop allowing others' behavior to dictate your worth. You honor your time, your energy, and your presence. You speak, act, and move from a place of dignity rather than fear or dependence. Respecting yourself is an act of love in motion. It reinforces your value and solidifies your autonomy. Emotional nourishment is equally vital. Your mind and heart crave attention, reflection, and care. You cultivate habits that replenish rather than drain. You surround yourself with environments, ideas, and people that lift you rather than tether you to old pain. You invest in learning, in movement, in creativity, in silence, in rituals that reconnect you with the self. Every small act of care compounds into resilience and joy. Contrast teaches clarity. Self-neglect leads to depletion, restlessness, and disconnection. Self-devotion leads to energy, fulfillment, and alignment. Self-hate constricts. Self-love expands. When you nurture the self, every area of life is elevated. Your relationships, your choices, your vision for the future. You operate from abundance rather than scarcity, from strength rather than fear, from intention rather than reaction. Learning to love yourself again is not instant. It is a daily practice, often subtle but profoundly transformative. It requires patience, consistency, and courage. You will face moments when doubt creeps in, when old patterns of self-criticism arise, when guilt or shame resurface. In these moments, you return to your mantras, your rituals, and your awareness. You remind yourself, I am worthy. I am learning. I am present. I am enough. Repetition strengthens belief. Action reinforces identity. Contrast also emerges in relationships. When you love yourself, you no longer tolerate disrespect, manipulation, or neglect from others. Self-love teaches discernment, awareness, and the courage to stand alone if necessary. It makes you magnetic, not in a superficial way, but in the sense that you draw experiences, people, and opportunities aligned with the life you are choosing to create. You no longer chase validation. You generate it internally. And here, the path naturally leads to boundaries. Because self-love without boundaries is incomplete. Love without limits becomes vulnerable to exploitation, depletion, or compromise of integrity. To truly love yourself, you must know where the self begins and ends, and communicate that clearly to the world. Boundaries are not walls. They are declarations of worth, acts of protection, and commitments to the self. They ensure that the energy, respect, and devotion you cultivate inwardly are mirrored outwardly in your interactions and choices. Contrast continues to guide you. Without boundaries, self-love leaks away, diluted by others' demands, expectations, or neglect. With boundaries, self-love solidifies, grows, and radiates. Without limits, relationships breed chaos or imbalance. With limits, they foster respect, clarity, and mutual growth. Self-love, at its core, is liberation. It liberates you from dependency on approval, from cycles of resentment, and from patterns that once defined weakness as identity. It frees you to be whole, centered, and engaged with life on your own terms. It empowers every subsequent act of healing, growth, and mastery. And as you nurture yourself, you build an inner sanctuary. A place where storms no longer dictate mood, where memories do not control thought, and where your presence is rooted in strength rather than reaction. This sanctuary is your foundation, and it prepares you for the next stage. Saying no when necessary, defining limits, and enforcing the boundaries that protect your hard-won peace. Learning to love yourself again is not an endpoint. It is a continuous practice, evolving with every challenge and every victory. It is the fuel that sustains resilience, the shield that guards against relapse, and the compass that points toward fulfillment. It is radical, fierce, gentle, and necessary. And now, as self-love grows from seed to strength, the next chapter emerges naturally. Boundaries. The art of defining and defending your limits ensures that the love you cultivate within is honored without, keeping you safe, centered, and unshakable. Chapter 9. Boundaries. Your new emotional armor. Boundaries are not punishment. They are not walls to keep people out. They are doors you control. They are the armor that allows you to move through life without giving away your energy, your peace, or your power. They are the visible and invisible lines that separate survival from surrender, growth from chaos, and strength from depletion. You have carried too much already, too much compromise, too much silence in the face of disrespect, too much forgiveness when it drained you, too many moments where your needs were secondary and your value was overlooked. Every unguarded interaction left a mark, a crack in your defenses, a fissure of doubt. And now, after rebuilding and reclaiming your self-worth, you must protect it. Contrast shows the necessity. Open wounds bleed energy, trust, and clarity. Guarded growth preserves life force, focus, and integrity. Without boundaries, you are exposed to chaos disguised as kindness, manipulation masked as concern, and demands disguised as love. With boundaries, you reclaim control. You define what enters your space, what words take root in your mind, and what actions shape your day. Boundaries are deceptively simple, but their power is profound. They begin with awareness. You notice what makes you uncomfortable, drained, or disrespected. You feel the tug of old patterns, the compulsion to say yes when every instinct says no. And in that recognition lies your first act of sovereignty, noticing. Awareness is the first wall, even before any words are spoken. Next comes articulation. Boundaries must be communicated clearly, without ambiguity or apology. I cannot engage in this right now. This behavior is not acceptable to me. I need space to think, heal, or grow. Each statement is a declaration of self-respect. Each word reinforces the truth. You are no longer passive in your own life. You speak, you choose, and you protect without shame. Contrast deepens the lesson. Without articulation, boundaries are invisible. The world steps over them, drains you, and reinforces old habits of self-neglect. With clear expression, boundaries become gates of empowerment. People may resist, push, or test them. That is natural. Resistance is the measure of how much power you are reclaiming. Boundaries are also flexible, but only on your terms. They are not walls of isolation, but doors that open when respect is present. They allow connection without surrender. They allow love without compromise. They create trust without vulnerability to harm. When you set a boundary, you are not rejecting others. You are affirming yourself. Contrast again. Without boundaries, connection can be exploitation. With boundaries, connection becomes choice. Without limits, love and loyalty are taken for granted. With limits, relationships are honored, reciprocal, and nourishing. Boundaries give clarity to both sides. They signal what is acceptable and what is not, creating safety for growth. Boundaries extend beyond relationships. They protect time, energy, and focus. They define how you spend your hours, the commitments you accept, and the environments you inhabit. They ensure that you are not overextended, depleted, or misaligned with your priorities. Boundaries allow the reconstructed self you built to flourish without interference. The courage to enforce them is essential. Boundaries are only as strong as your willingness to uphold them. You will face pushback from others, from your own fears, from the habit of appeasement. You may feel guilt, hesitation, or doubt. These feelings are temporary. Your long-term growth depends on persistence. Every time you assert your boundary, you reinforce your sovereignty and strengthen your emotional armor. Contrast is your guide here. Without courage, boundaries collapse. With courage, boundaries empower. Without action, your intentions remain theory. With action, they become reality. Courage transforms words into protection, principles into practice, and awareness into freedom. Boundaries also redefine your relationships. They weed out toxicity without bitterness. They clarify intentions without aggression. They create a space where respect, understanding, and shared values can thrive. When you set boundaries, you attract people who honor you and repel those who exploit weakness. This is not selfishness. It is self-preservation. It is not cruelty. It is wisdom. It is the ultimate expression of loving yourself enough to protect your energy and your heart. Contrast remains constant. Without boundaries, life drains you. With boundaries, life energizes you. Without limits, chaos dominates. With limits, clarity and peace prevail. Boundaries are the threshold between survival and mastery. And now, with armor in place, the next challenge emerges naturally: courage to move forward. Because boundaries are only half the battle. The other half is stepping boldly into the life you have reclaimed. It is the courage to pursue your vision, embrace your independence, and act with integrity in a world that often challenges both. Boundaries protect what you have rebuilt. Courage propels you beyond it. Your new emotional armor does more than shield you. It prepares you. It gives you the clarity, strength, and confidence to take risks, to love again wisely, and to step into the future without fear. The next chapter will teach you how to harness courage as your guiding force, turning protection into action and fear into unstoppable momentum. Chapter 10. Courage to move forward without closure. Fear is a liar. It whispers that you are fragile, incomplete, unworthy of joy. It tells you to wait, to hesitate, to cling to what you know, even if what you know is pain. It insists that closure is a prerequisite for peace, that the past must be resolved before you can step forward. But courage is the refusal to listen. Courage is moving when the path is unclear, walking when the questions remain unanswered, acting when the story feels unfinished. You have lived through silence, betrayal, and abandonment. You have felt the weight of unanswered questions and the sting of absence. And yet, here you are, standing at the edge of a new chapter, the wreckage of the old behind you, the unknown ahead. The choice is stark. Remain trapped in the comfort of familiarity, frozen in what was, or step forward into the uncertainty of what could be. Bravery is not the absence of fear. It is the refusal to let fear dictate your life. Contrast illuminates the truth. Stagnation paralyzes. Movement liberates. Comfort can feel safe, but it suffocates growth. Courage may tremble, but it pushes you beyond what holds you back. Every step into the unknown reinforces strength, reshapes identity, and expands possibility. Starting over is daunting. The familiar chaos, the routines of pain, may call to you. But each repetition of old patterns is a choice, not destiny. You are not bound to the past. You are free to redefine yourself, to craft new routines, to design your life around growth, freedom, and mastery. Fear wants you to believe otherwise. Refuse to comply. Trust, too, becomes a battlefield. How do you open your heart after betrayal? How do you believe in others when faith has been broken? Courage teaches that trust is not naive. It is intentional. You start with yourself, honoring your instincts, reinforcing your boundaries, and practicing self-compassion. Then, slowly, selectively, you allow connection again, armed with wisdom and tempered by experience. You do not seek validation. You grant it to yourself first. Contrast sharpens again. Fear isolates. Courage connects. Doubt immobilizes. Action propels. The past is a teacher, not a jailer. Closure is a bonus, not a prerequisite. Bravery is the act of choosing forward even when the story remains unfinished. Courage also requires resilience. You will stumble, falter, and face rejection. The world may not offer apologies, explanations, or neat endings. The chapters of life are often messy, incomplete, and unpredictable. But every time you rise after a fall, every time you choose action over hesitation, you reinforce a truth. You are stronger than your fear, wiser than your doubts, and capable of creating your own closure through movement. Contrast remains your guide. Comfort shelters, but limits. Courage expands. Fear whispers, but you answer with action. Stagnation lingers, but momentum liberates. Every step forward is a statement. I will not be defined by what was. I will be defined by what I choose to build. Bravery is a habit as much as a decision. It is cultivated in small choices, saying yes to growth, saying no to stagnation, taking responsibility for your happiness, refusing to ruminate endlessly on what cannot be changed. Each decision compounds into a character forged through experience, resilience, and deliberate action. It is in these moments that courage becomes identity. Contrast finalizes the arc. Living in fear is reaction. Moving forward without closure is creation. Holding on to what cannot serve you is survival. Choosing your life intentionally is mastery. This is the ultimate transformation, from dependency on answers to independence in action, from waiting for others to providing for yourself, from brokenness to relentless forward momentum. Now, envision your path ahead. It may be uncertain, jagged, or even lonely at times, but it is yours. Every choice, every act of courage, every refusal to let fear dominate maps a future only you can inhabit. Closure may never come from outside, but closure always comes from within, built step by step, decision by decision, as you claim your life back. Movement is your rebellion against stagnation. Courage is your weapon against despair. And each day, as you choose to rise, act, and grow, you reinforce a truth too many forget. You are not broken beyond repair. You are not powerless. You are not dependent on anyone else's answers, approval, or timing. You are the architect of your destiny. As you step forward, carry the lessons of every wound, every heartbreak, every unanswered question. Carry them as tools, not burdens. Carry them as evidence of strength, not reminders of weakness. Your past no longer controls you. Your present self directs you. Your future self waits, bold, unshakable, and free. Courage to move forward without closure is the final bridge. It is the declaration that your life is yours. Your growth is unstoppable, and your story continues, unfinished by others, but fully authored by you. And beyond this courage lies new beginnings, limitless potential, and the freedom to create the life you are always meant to live. Chapter 11. The Quiet Strength of Starting Over. Starting over is not a failure. It is not a sign that you lost, that you are weak, or that you wasted time. It is proof that you survived. It is proof that you are still standing, still breathing, still capable of growth, still willing to try again. It is self-resurrection, the deliberate choice to rise from the ashes, to rebuild, to craft something stronger, wiser, and more aligned with who you have become. Contrast makes the lesson clear. Chaos rages inside when life collapses. Control emerges when you take one deliberate step forward. Desperation tempts you to rush, to force outcomes, to cling to what no longer serves you. Patience teaches that each small action compounds. Each choice creates momentum. Each day becomes a building block for the life you are designing. There is power in stillness, in calm, in the measured steps of reconstruction. Rebuilding begins with acknowledging reality. You accept what has been lost, what cannot be changed, and what was beyond your control. You release the weight of blame, regret, and resentment. You honor the lessons, embrace the pain, and turn them into tools rather than chains. This clarity becomes your foundation, a firm ground from which everything else grows. Step by step, you reclaim routine, habits, and environment. You focus on essentials first: your mind, your body, your heart. You establish rhythms that stabilize your day and anchor your energy. These small acts, preparing meals, exercising, journaling, meditating, reconnecting with passions, compound into resilience. Every action reinforces that you are in charge of your life, that control is possible, and that growth is inevitable. Contrast guides you again. Desperation leads to mistakes, burnout, and confusion. Patience leads to clarity, consistency, and mastery. Chaos tempts you to abandon structure. Control ensures that even the hardest days move you forward. Strength is quiet here. It does not scream. It does not demand recognition. It whispers in the choices you make when no one is watching, in the discipline you uphold when life feels heavy, in the courage to continue even when progress is slow. Starting over is also about courage. courage to let go of the old and embrace the unknown. It is courage to stop comparing your journey to others. It is courage to trust that your life, rebuilt intentionally, will be enough. It is courage to believe that setbacks are temporary, lessons are permanent, and your capacity for renewal is limitless. Contrast teaches perspective. Weakness clings to what is gone. Strength builds what will come. Fear tempts hesitation. Hope demands action. Every morning you rise, every decision you make, every boundary you enforce, reinforces that you are choosing life rather than resignation, creation rather than decay. Rebuilding is also a practice of self-compassion. You allow yourself to be imperfect, to learn, to grow without judgment. You forgive missteps and miscalculations. You celebrate small victories. The first morning you wake without dread. The first conversation you navigate without anxiety. The first act of love toward yourself untainted by fear. These quiet victories are monumental. They are the proof that you are rising, that you are alive, and that your future is yours to shape. Contrast finalizes the lesson. Chaos can overwhelm, but patience restores. Desperation can break, but discipline rebuilds. Loss can define, but intention liberates. Starting over is not a retreat, it is a declaration. It says, I am alive, I am capable. I will rise again and again until the life I want exists. And as you take each measured step, you sense a subtle transformation. The broken pieces are no longer reminders of failure. They are the foundation of strength. Your mind is sharper, your heart is steadier, your vision clearer. Starting over is no longer scary, it is sacred. It is the quiet power that fuels resilience, creativity, and freedom. From this quiet strength emerges the next stage, designing a new life that mirrors your inner transformation. A life built not on reaction, but on intention. A life that honors who you are now and the strength you have cultivated through survival, healing, and courage. Chapter 12. Becoming someone you're proud of. Pride is not arrogance. It is not boasting. It is the quiet recognition that you have done the hard work, faced the storms, and chosen yourself over fear, over doubt, over stagnation. Becoming someone you're proud of is not a destination. It is a daily practice. It is the deliberate act of rising again and again to meet your highest potential. It is aligning your actions, thoughts, and choices with the values and vision you have cultivated through struggle, reflection, and courage. Contrast illuminates the path. Scarcity whispers, you are not enough. You will fail. You do not deserve. Abundance replies, you have survived. You have strength. You are worthy of your own devotion. Insecurity tempts hesitation. Self-trust demands movement. You choose which voice shapes your story, and every day you practice that choice until it becomes automatic, until it becomes who you are. Reinvention begins with awareness. You notice the thoughts, behaviors, and patterns that no longer serve you. You acknowledge the fears, insecurities, and doubts that linger from the past. And you decide, they will not define you. Your past experiences, betrayal, loss, abandonment, or silence are not chains. They are evidence that you endured, proof that you can withstand, and lessons that fortify your wisdom. Contrast guides the transformation. Who you were may have been reactive, unsure, or constrained by circumstance. Who you are becoming is intentional, disciplined, and self-aware. Every choice you make reinforces identity. The habits you build, the boundaries you uphold, the relationships you honor, the goals you pursue. Consistency over time becomes character. Actions define you more than thoughts ever could. Self-trust is the cornerstone. You learn to rely on your instincts, honor your values, and take responsibility for your decisions. Mistakes will come, they are inevitable, but they do not diminish your worth. Each misstep is a lesson, each setback a teacher, each challenge an opportunity to reinforce your resilience and judgment. You become the person who shows up for themselves, even when no one else does. Contrast deepens. Insecurity doubts your path. Self-trust guides your journey. Fear of failure freezes. Courage propels. Dependency limits. Autonomy empowers. With every act of integrity, discipline, and intentionality, you step closer to the person you aspire to be. Someone proud, capable, and unshakable. Reinvention is not instant. It is forged in repetition, reflection, and resilience. It is choosing to respond rather than react. It is honoring your energy, cultivating your skills, and building habits that support your vision. It is standing firm in storms, moving steadily through uncertainty, and committing to growth even when it feels uncomfortable. Every day is an opportunity to practice, to refine, to elevate. Contrast teaches persistence. Complacency maintains the old. Action shapes the new. Comfort preserves stagnation. Discomfort expands potential. You do not wait for transformation. It is created one decision at a time, one action at a time, one moment of self-discipline at a time. Pride also grows from reflection. You measure progress not by perfection, but by the distance traveled, the obstacles overcome, and the courage demonstrated. You acknowledge the victories, large and small, the morning you honored your boundaries, the time you chose self-compassion, the instance you acted from clarity rather than fear. Each victory, no matter how subtle, compounds into confidence, competence, and momentum. Contrast sharpens again. Reactivity drains. Intention energizes. Doubt hinders. Consistency empowers. Weakness whispers, "You cannot." Strength responds, "Watch me." This is the daily work of becoming someone proud, choosing action over hesitation, values over impulses, and long-term growth over fleeting satisfaction. And now, you stand on the edge of mastery. The person you are becoming is ready to step fully into their power. The foundations of self-love, boundaries, courage, resilience, and deliberate action are set. What remains is the final ascent, the embodiment of all you have learned, the integration of your wounds into wisdom, the transformation from survivor to master of your own life. Becoming someone you're proud of is not a reward. It is a responsibility. It is the ongoing commitment to live intentionally, act courageously, and honor the life you fought to rebuild. And as you embrace this version of yourself, the stage is set for mastery. The final chapter where every lesson, every struggle, and every act of courage converges into unshakable power and freedom. Chapter 13. Healing as Self-Mastery. Healing is not weakness. It is not something passive or accidental. It is not waiting for the world to offer comfort, answers, or closure. Healing is strength. It is the deliberate act of transforming pain into power, suffering into strategy, and wounds into wisdom. Every scar, every tear, every moment of despair has contributed to the architecture of your resilience. Your recovery is not evidence of survival. It is evidence of mastery over yourself. Contrast clarifies the truth. Old patterns trapped you in repetition, shame, and dependency. New identity empowers you with self-awareness, discipline, and choice. Where once your reactions were chaotic, now your responses are intentional. Where once fear dictated your steps, now courage charts your course. Healing reframes what once broke you into tools that now build you stronger, wiser, and capable of more than you imagined. Pain, when processed consciously, becomes an unlikely teacher. It shows you the boundaries you must enforce, the behaviors you must abandon, and the habits you must embrace. It exposes the lies you believed about yourself and the illusions you accepted from others. And it challenges you to rise above each limitation, to cultivate patience, discipline, and self-respect. Healing is therefore an active practice, a daily reaffirmation of your values, choices, and vision. Contrast illuminates again. Survival reacts. Self-mastery acts. Weakness clings. Strength creates. Old habits dictated emotional chaos. New practices cultivate clarity and intentionality. Every step you take in your recovery is a conscious declaration. I will not be defined by my wounds. I will define myself by my actions. Discipline is born from struggle. Every moment of resisting destructive impulses, every boundary you enforce, every uncomfortable conversation you navigate with integrity reinforces your capacity for control. Healing is not indulgence. It is training. It strengthens the mind to remain steady when chaos calls, the heart to remain compassionate without compromise, and the spirit to remain persistent when progress feels slow. You are no longer merely surviving. You are orchestrating your evolution. Contrast deepens. Old identity waited for permission, validation, or resolution from others. New identity creates its own power, affirms its own worth, and acts independently. Old self responded to fear. New self responds with strategy. Old self reacted impulsively. New self chooses deliberately. Healing, at this stage, is mastery. It is the synthesis of emotional intelligence, resilience, and action. Vision emerges as a product of this self-mastery. Through clarity, boundaries, and courage, you begin to see your life not as a series of setbacks, but as a canvas for intentional creation. Pain no longer defines the narrative. It informs the strategy. It teaches you what to pursue, what to protect, and what to release. Your journey becomes less about avoiding harm and more about consciously designing growth, abundance, and fulfillment. Contrast remains constant. Old patterns confined you. New identity liberates you. Reactivity trapped you. Intentionality empowers you. Fear once dictated your choices. Now discipline, self-trust, and vision guide every decision. Healing transforms from a reactive process into an art, a mastery of your inner world that radiates outward into your life. Every act of courage, every decision to rise when you felt weak, every choice to love, forgive, and rebuild compounds into identity. You are no longer the person defined by absence, betrayal, or unanswered questions. You are the person forged through experience, refined by reflection, and elevated through deliberate action. Healing is the crucible where weakness becomes strength, chaos becomes clarity, and survival transforms into mastery. Contrast finalizes the lesson. Old wounds whispered limitation. New wisdom speaks opportunity. Old pain demanded repetition. New resilience commands growth. Old identity waited for change. New identity creates it. You have moved beyond being a victim of circumstance. You are now an architect of your own evolution. And now, as you stand on the threshold of the final chapter, the emotional climax beckons. The transformation is complete. Wounds have become wisdom. Fear has become courage. Despair has become action. Healing is not just recovery. It is empowerment, self-mastery, and the unshakable truth that your life is fully in your hands. Your pain has forged discipline. Your suffering has created clarity. Your journey has built the strength to rise, act, and live intentionally. The stage is set. The final chapter will unite every lesson, every struggle, and every act of courage into a crescendo of freedom, triumph, and the life you were always meant to claim. Closure from within. The unshakable self. Closure is not given. It is not handed to you through apologies, explanations, or neat endings. Closure is claimed. It is crafted moment by moment, decision by decision. It is the declaration that your peace does not depend on others, your strength does not require permission, and your story does not wait for anyone to write it. This is the unshakable self, sovereign, whole, and free. Contrast reveals the truth. Dependence leaves you adrift, tethered to the past, at the mercy of absence. Sovereignty anchors you in the present, empowered by choice, unbound by external validation. Heartbreak once dictated your identity. Now your inner empire rises, built on resilience, courage, and deliberate action. You are no longer waiting for the world to make sense. You are the world that makes sense to itself. Every wound, every unanswered question, every betrayal and loss has been transformed into a stepping stone. You have learned to stand firm in chaos, to act with patience in uncertainty, and to respond with clarity when fear calls. Your mind is disciplined. Your heart is resilient. Your spirit is relentless. This is not a return to what was. It is the emergence of who you were always capable of becoming. Contrast sharpens again. Heartbreak weakens. Self-mastery strengthens. Confusion binds. Clarity liberates. Waiting paralyzes. Action propels. You have cultivated the capacity to move, to create, to love, and to grow without external permission. The absence of closure no longer threatens you. It defines you as someone who can produce their own resolution, their own peace, their own power. Your sovereignty is both quiet and monumental. It is in the decisions you make each day. To honor your boundaries, to nurture your growth, to invest in relationships that uplift, and to release what no longer serves you. It is in the recognition that you are the author of your life, the architect of your future, and the commander of your own emotional landscape. This is the true meaning of closure. Not endings imposed, but endings created. Contrast guides mastery. Chaos used to rule. Now discipline governs. Pain used to define. Now wisdom shapes. Uncertainty once terrified. Now intentionality drives. You have moved from reaction to creation, from fracture to fortitude, from waiting for answers to giving yourself authority. Your inner empire is built on the pillars of self-love, resilience, courage, and discipline. It is fortified by every choice you have made to rise, rebuild, and evolve. It does not crumble when storms appear. It adapts, grows, and thrives. Where once your spirit felt fragile, it is now indomitable. Where once your heart clung, it now releases with grace. Where once your mind wandered in doubt, it now navigates with focus and clarity. Contrast finalizes the transformation. Dependency yielded fear. Sovereignty produces freedom. Weakness became strength. Heartache became insight. Loss became the foundation for renewal. Every struggle, every wound, every unanswered question has led you here, to a life authored by intention, fortified by resilience, and illuminated by self-mastery. Now, as you step forward, you carry a truth few realize. Peace does not come from closure, but from creation. Strength does not come from survival alone, but from mastering yourself. Your power does not wait for permission. It is inherent, discovered through trials and cultivated through deliberate action. You are the ending you once sought. You are the answer that never came. You are the force that no circumstance can diminish. Contrast lingers, one last time. Heartbreak demanded you wait. Sovereignty demands you rise. Fear whispered surrender. Courage shouts action. Dependence begged for validation. Self-mastery claims authority. This is the culmination of your journey. Unshakable, undeniable, unbound. Your story is not defined by what others did, said, or failed to do. It is defined by every choice you make now, every boundary you enforce, every act of self-love, every courageous step forward. Closure is not a gift. It is a declaration. You create it. You live it. You embody it. Rise. Step into your power. Stand in the knowledge that you are whole, complete, and sovereign. Let the world test you. Let storms challenge you. Let chaos arrive. And remain unshaken. You are the closure you have been waiting for. You are the unshakable self. You are free.